Welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. I am joined by Declan McConville and the one and only JP Mason. We are live. I was just saying to Declan, JP, your diary is always so full to the brim that you'll be running about making yourself a wee last-minute brew.
Not well, I was, but not quite full to the brim yet. Not got gigs back just as yet, but almost.
Well, I mean, we've spoke about it, blow by blow, JP, over the last few weeks, and it's great to know that in terms of the live venue industry and also live football, it does look as though we're kind of over the worst of that, doesn't it?
I'd like to think so, yeah. And we were kind of given a heads up that might be the case, and so it came to pass the other day. So can't wait. I mean, I was. Like Declan, I was bizarrely called upon by the mainstream media, tin hat on firmly, and was asked for my opinion on crowds returning to the football the other day. So I ended up, I was up at 6 o'clock in the morning to be on a couple of radio stations to give my opinion. I actually managed to get a Mission Impossible 2 reference in as well, which is one of my favourite action films of the early noughties, a John Woo classic. Because I described this particular hiatus as being like a mission difficult, whereas the last hiatus of 18 months was Mission Impossible. So,
love it, love it, mate. But yeah, as you say, get the tin hat on if you've been doing all that stuff with the mainstream. I mean, there's Declan up in the top left there, national broadcast, wearing the hoops. Well done, Dec. Well done, young man.
Requested to wear the hoops, by the way. That was not by my own admission. That was a BBC request to wear the hoops.
Was it? So superb. Right. Yep. Tremendous. It's great because, as I say, I mean, we're back. We are back, and we're going to be talking about the game the other night. We're going to be talking about this Saturday's game, strange kick-off time, but we'll be covering it in any case. And the incomings, the outgoings, be that transfers or injuries, there's loads to talk about, as always, in the world of Celtic. And also Scott Brown will be making a guest appearance as well, not in person, but as a subject on this particular show. So let's kick it off with the transfer gossip, which seems to be more than gossip. Declan McConville, Matt O'Riley. It wasn't that long ago we were talking about Riley McGree. Now it's Matt O'Riley. He looks like a great fit once again for this style of football that Ange is implementing.
Yeah, I think, after the summer window bang shut, Paul, we looked at that midfield, position, the 3 players in there, and we could see how short we were. We had James McCarthy obviously coming in, a guy that hadn't played a lot of football. We'd been out for such a long time with no club. We had guys going in there. We had to trust Neil Beaton to go back into midfield, which I think for a lot of Celtic fans was a bit of a risk to an extent because of his poor performances that we'd seen so many times at centre-back. But, been one of the outstanding performers this season, Big Nero. And then there was obviously the worry that, Tommy Rogic or David Turnbull would pick up an injury and we'd been left so short in that position. And then we'd be counting guys coming in like Sorrow to kind of go into the 6 to let McGregor go into the, a wee bit further forward. But since we've added in the Gucci and Hatate, who I'm sure we'll talk about later on, we just look a lot more solid in there. And O'Riley coming in gives us a kind of 4 more defensive type players, even though I'm a wee bit hesitant to call Kalmack a defensive midfielder. He kind of does play in that deeper role under Ange's system, and it gives us those 4 kind of forward players and gives us just a wee bit of flexibility in that position now, which is going to be key going forward because we're going to need to use the squad. We've got so many games coming up, both domestically and obviously that game against Bodo Glimt. So it's going to be key to have plenty of bodies in there, and I think this will be a strong addition to the team going by his stats, which Alan Morrison sent a wee bit on. I think you can check that out somewhere, but it looks like a good fit for Ange Postecoglou's team.
He does. My eye was taken away from you there for a second, Deck, with that tremendous mug that JP is using. It's King Tuts. It's obviously it's a day for branded mugs. We've got Kyogo in there. We've got Spiritualised there and King Tuts down the bottom. I wouldn't expect any less for you, JP, to be honest with you. By the way, JP, one of the bands that's appearing at King Tuts is Willie Doug. He will be appearing very soon. He was on our Unplugged session. I'm going to plug that because it was one of the best sessions that we've done. So thank you for the recommendation, JP Mason. I thought he was tremendous. And what a storyteller as well.
Yeah, I watched it all last night. I'd watched a bit of it, but I watched it all last night, and he comes across really well. But I mean, he always has done. I've known him for probably about 16, 17 years, something like that, which is quite mental to think. But I've seen him play every in-house, out-house, doghouse in Edinburgh, plenty of festivals as well. Wickerman Festival, he was great at that. Played late night after the Wickerman was burned, and he played this kind of set at midnight. And my friend Scott that I took, he said it was the best thing he's ever seen at a festival. So high praise, and yeah, really nice guy, and hopefully picks up some new fans and people that like his stuff after that session.
Well, he's got one sitting right here. And if you've not watched that, I know you're a Beatles man. The final song is called Don't Mess with the Walrus. The song's almost as good as the story behind the song. So check it out. Everybody who's into their music, have a look at that sesh. I'm coming down to yourself because what a difference. Dec was talking about the stats, and I've read a lot online. There's a great Twitter thread actually from one of the statos. They don't mind us calling them stato, eh? I mean, that was the guy on fantasy football who was a bit of a geek, but being a stato is no longer geekery. It's part of the modern game. And they're talking about how well fitted he will be to a team that has a load of possession. I think that's one of the biggest things. A lot of players aren't used to having that kind of possession, being on the back foot, a la James McCarthy at Crystal Palace, playing a defensive system, coming into an Ange team. It's almost like a complete break in the rhythm that he's been used to. But it sounds as though, JP, he is going to be well fitted to Ange's team, Matt O'Riley. And what a difference that makes when you're actually bringing in every specific player to fit part of a game plan.
I can't actually get my head around the fact that we're going after, these targets that, you have people coming out raving about them, It's not these, guys that you can't get any background on them. Immediately there's background on them. And, well, the Riley McGree background was positive. I'd never heard of the guy. I'd never heard of Matt O'Riley either. The first thing that came to mind with Matt O'Riley when I heard the surname was the Fawlty Towers sketch. I don't know if you remember that. So we are O'Reilly men, and he's just like, "What are you talking about, Manuel?" And then he goes, "Oh, O'Reilly, man." Yeah. So there you go. That's a very, very old reference. Going back about 2 generations. So.
Dec got it, which was good. Dec definitely got it.
I think is that the Builders episode, JP?
Aye, it's the Builders episode. Dec goes for pints with Jerry McNee. I mean, there you. That's a revelation that came to pass last night.
And many others, JP. Many others.
It blows my mind because Declan won't remember Jerry McNee on the telly.
Oh, I know.
He was like,
I've got his books though. I've got some of his books. That Jimmy McGrory book. I think Paul, John, you've got one in the studio there. It's quite hard to come by now, but his stories and tales in Jimmy McGrory are fascinating because this is the guy that sat down with arguably Celtic's greatest ever player, Celtic's greatest ever goal scorer, certainly. And his stories are just, piling that book together and talking to Jimmy McGrory's fascinating.
It is, but as JP mentioned there, he was such a part of my growing up period, supporting Celtic, watching them on the telly Saturday night, Sunday afternoon, JP, and that voice. When I'm watching the old videos, I'm doing the retro series at the moment, and a lot of those games are being commentated on. That's the one. Brilliant. What a cover as well. Yep. Don't you just love that? Gerald, exactly. Yes. And you hear him, you hear Jock Brown, Archie McPherson, all the classics.
But it was the Lil Z guy on Twitter that posted, he does the On This Day. Mm-hmm. And he did On This Day for today, and it was the 10 and 6s. So today, 30 years ago, Celtic won the 10 and 6s.
Brilliant.
He posted a clip of the players going up to get the trophy, and they've got the People's Home strip on. And I was at that, right? I don't think I was there because it was on for 2 days, and I think I was there the day before, so it would be like the initial rounds or whatever it was. I can't even remember the makeup of it. But as their players are going up, he starts talking like dead seriously as if they're collecting like a major European trophy or something like that. It's like John Collins, the joy on John Collins' face, and then he goes, Tony Cascarino collecting his prize. And then he says, Gordon Marshall. He goes, Gordon Marshall, the outstanding goalkeeper of the tournament. It's
brilliant, because Marsh is wearing the black, the change goalkeeper strip with all the wee blocks on it. Brilliant. I remember it well, mate. I remember watching it, not knowing the result. Did we beat St Johnstone 4-2? That's from memory. Aye, 4-2. Brilliant.
But I always thought it was amazing seeing the players wearing trainers because you just all you'd seen of a football player was him in a football kit. Because like back in those days, you didn't really get to see much pictures of them like in their normal gear. So to see them wearing like white, like I don't know, high-tech trainers or something.
High-tech, high tops. The thing is, JP, when you're watching it as well, you're thinking, imagine a professional football club allowing their players to be playing that level because they were getting stuck in, right? The injuries that we've had this season, during a season, we just send them to play Lieutenant Sixes. I can't see that returning anytime soon. It was good, though. It was definitely good. And it was during a really dark, bleak period in Celtic's history.
Sorry, I went off piece there. You asked me about O'Riley and I started talking about quality players and the 10 and 60s, but it can happen. The O'Riley signing is interesting because it's just, again, it's come out of nowhere. It's not somebody I'd heard of, but from everything you're reading, it does sound like he's going to fit the profile of what we need. And I mean, it's pretty obvious that if we didn't get Riley McGree, he was obviously in the market for somebody or somebody of that ilk, that position. So you're not just going to just go, oh, well, we'll just give up. We've got, however many days left of the transfer window. We're not just going to go, oh, well, we didn't get him. We'll no bother going in for anybody else. But I think I said this last week, if he's got a list of targets, clearly, and they're all, his targets. So it'll be a case of like, okay, Riley McGree didn't work. We'll move on to the next one. And it's good that we're obviously maintaining the quality levels on the signing targets, and the things are happening quickly. I think the way that he reacted last week to the media in terms of saying whatever comes out tomorrow is not true, and I think in order to do that, he's been like, right, if we go for somebody and we get them in quick, and there's none of this protracted saga of will he, won't he, is there other clubs or anything like that. I mean, we definitely gone out for this guy O'Riley and just been like, right, that's it, we've got him. There's no, dubiety over this. And it's when you add it into what I saw on Monday night, it's pretty exciting. And I think it's also with an eye on the Rangers game on the 2nd of February, because I don't think we're going to call for that to be pulled. I don't think it's going to be our call, put it that way, because it's now looking like there's going to be a lot more players from the other side that will be missing rather than ourselves. And I think we could cope without Tom Rogic, especially based on his performance on Monday, because I didn't think it was very good. Controversial, sorry to be critical of a player after a win, but I didn't think Rogic had his best games.
That's a fair comment. And since the game, quite a few comments have come in, JP, saying the same. But I think the key to that is when you're bringing in more quality, which Ange undoubtedly is, you can get away. You're not relying so much on that one person to unlock a defence. And, time and time again, we have been relying on Tommy Rogic. And, against Hibs in the first game at Easter Road, when he went off, we didn't have that creativity. And we managed the game and we won the game and it was comfortable enough at Easter Road 3-1. We just didn't have the creativity. So for him to be off the boil on Monday night, but for us still to be able to create openings, I think that speaks volumes. Now, a couple of things you've said there, JP, I'm going to throw this to Deck. He did say the other day there about the transfer dealings. Now, that's in stark contrast to the way he was talking near the beginning of the season, where he was saying that the transfers weren't being done quickly enough. So it does seem as though there's a relationship being built up, and I'm going to say between Nicholson and also Ange, but certainly behind the scenes when we're talking about transfers.
Yeah, I think, how many times have we seen Celtic mess about, press the pause button, wait, go back to deals, whereas just now it seems we acted swiftly. We brought the 3 players from Japan, and before January had even kicked off, they were all done on the 31st of December. That was a good sign. I think Michael probably knows now that they can't, mess Ange about, because he is their man. He is the Celtic supporters' man. The unity between the manager, the players and the support is so strong just now. I mean, being in that stadium the other night, JP will probably agree with me, the unity and the energy there, I know it was the first game back, but it's just so strong just now. And it was just almost like a kind of perfect Monday evening. The fans were behind the team. The football was great. I mean, I thought the first half was absolutely sensational. We really went at the game. And I think the board now know that they need to support him. Ange will probably be getting annoyed because he's now, we're into a real run of games here. Every game's crucial. Next Wednesday evening is going to be crucial at Tynecastle. So it's a massive, massive game for us. And he's probably sick of talking about players. And as well as that, with his comments in mind, it just kind of dampened the flame in any rumours that were going to happen for 2-3 days. Then bang, O'Reilly's name pops up. There he's in Glasgow today. He's meant to be completing his medical by, and it's completed, and he should be a Celtic player within the next 24 hours. Hopefully this won't be a clip that's edited up if he doesn't sign, but I'm pretty confident on this one that he will sign.
Leave that bit in. If they do clip it, they might leave that bit in.
Can I just read out these stats for Alan, though, Paul? I hope he doesn't mind me doing this, but in terms of the data, top-rated central midfielder in League One, and who scored 13th in tackles attempted, 4th in key passes, 2 tackles, 1.5 intercepts per game. First in attempted passes, seems a genuine all-rounder. I think it's also important that Celtic's kind of signing players that do fit that mould of play. It's something that Brentford and Midtjylland and other teams have did. That's something we heard Don Mackay talk about when he came in initially, about looking towards clubs like that, clubs that are fueled with their transfers with data analysis and stuff. And the Department of Transfers just now seem to have really got their act together. I don't think it's just Ange. I think his agent, Frank Trimboli, probably has a big part in this, but the dealings that are happening look good. I just hope that we can try and shift a bit of the deadwood out the building still, because I do imagine guys like Bolingoli and Barkas, I know Yeti's injured just now, that might be one that we struggle with, are all on very good wages. So I think to possibly make way for even more, we might need to get a few of those guys out the building. But in terms of transfer strategy, so far, spot on, and credit to Michael Nicholson. Yeah,
absolutely. And what was the name of Angie's agent? Frank
Trimboli.
Sounds like a character out of a gangster movie. Do you go for a drink with him as well in the West End?
No.
He's one of the few, he doesn't.
He's too busy.
He's too busy for you, right? So I'm looking at that situation that we've got there. Again, a clause in the contract allows us to get him for 1.5. So it looks like it's going to be value for money. That's another thing, JP, when you look at the 3 players coming in from Japan, the value, when you look at the fact that we've spent about €5 million on the 3 players combined. Yeah. That's astonishing value when you look at the performances.
But then I meant to say this last week. There was a report from a prominent red top media partner that said that we were big spending Celtic in the transfer window. I mean, I don't really think you could call us big spending in this transfer window. 3 players, like you say, for the thick end of £5 million is, to me, is not big spending. If we were laying out, I would say, the summer of 2020 into 2021 season, when we were, we bought a Yeti and Barkas for £5 million a piece, and we were big money for Laxalt and Duffy wages. That was big spending, but it wasn't spent correctly, and you don't know the whether the manager at that time had any interest in those players, or if he was just handed them after a series of knockbacks on previous attempts on players, like the guy for Sampdoria. Was it Colley from Sampdoria?
The centre half,
the centre half, and then
Foster,
Ivan Toney. I don't want to mention him because he scored last night against Man United, but him as well. Apparently, he was in the building. Why did that not happen? So that was big spending at that time, and this time it's, I'd say, far more prudent. And with regards to players going out, I think we might struggle to get the guys that we want to move on, for their sakes as much as ours. There's no point in them sitting there not playing football. It kind of feels a bit Championship Manager when you're sitting there with guys not playing. You're just kind of like, there's no point in these guys being here. I might as well move them on to another club so that they can play elsewhere. But I don't know if this window might be a tricky one. Like Declan said, if a Yeti's carrying an injury, there's not going to be exactly a lot of knocks at the door for him. And Barkas is a bit of a niche position, goalkeeper, high wages, probably only going to be attracting interest in certain countries, I would have thought. And it's your chance of whatever that comes out.
Yeah, we'll be looking at those players on that list, JP, and I think at least 3 of them will probably be on all of our lists in terms of ones that you want to leave the building. But I was just thinking back to what you were saying about Jimmy McGrory earlier there, Declan. He was one of those Celtic players that when we talk about him, those of a certain vintage call him by his entire name, including his middle name, James Edward McGrory, Charles Patrick Tully, Daniel Fergus McGrain. There's a few players that fall into that category, and I wonder why. I think it's a respect thing, isn't it? When the old team are talking about these guys from the past and they give you their full name, middle name, the lot.
Yeah, I don't know what Kyogo's middle name is, or Real Hatate, maybe something I think we might all need to learn, because if they continue performances that they're doing, these guys might be falling into that category at one point. But I always just find it really interesting, Paul. Bertie always used to refer to Jimmy McGrory as the boss, because it was Jimmy McGrory that signed him. And that was obviously, for a lot of lines, it was Jimmy McGrory that signed him and created that, magnificent team that went on to become the Lisbon Lions, all but one being Wispy. So yeah, I think it's just a respect thing for all the kind of older timers that they called the manager either the boss or Mr. McGrory, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one other thing before we move on, this is going back to your mainstream TV performance the other day there, Dick. Did you actually consider what you were going to put on that shelf? I noticed that the Beatles are not there today, but they were there the other day. Did you place that on there deliberately?
Yeah, you know what I mean. Through lockdown, I think we all get bored of the bookcases, didn't we? And they just,
We did.
Rotten. Whereas, JP's set up, and I've got this big kind of McCartney Bible that came out at Christmas time there. It's got every single tune in it, which he's penned, and there's a story behind every song of it. So for any Beatles or Wings or McCartney fans out there, I think that's the closest you're going to get to a kind of autobiography by the former Beatle, because he just doesn't seem to be interested in it. Whereas this is a kind of better insight through the years from his very first tune. I've Lost My Little Girl, I think it's called, right through to some of his more recent stuff. So yeah, if you're a Beatles fan or a McCartney fan, it's definitely one to check out.
I need to chime in here. I need to tell you something that I found a bunch of letters from my dad to my mum. My mum kept them, right? So this is like at the start of when they started going out with each other. And I found the first letter and he spelt her name wrong. And then obviously the subsequent letters, her name was spelled correctly. So he missed the E and the An, and her surname was Cybulska. And if you're Polish, you wouldn't say Cybulski, with an I at the end, you have to change it to an A. So he called her Anne Cybulski, which was obviously promptly changed in the second letter. But in the second letter, he's just talking about what's going on. I mean, the way that he's written the letters are amazing, like the way the words that he uses and things like that. But he says, so this, bearing in mind, this letter is dated the 10th of October, 1969. And he says, I've just bought the new LP by the Beatles. It's really good. Right? And I'm like, that's Abbey Road. that's Abbey Road he's talking about.
Oh, that's amazing.
Blew my mind that he was talking about a current release by the Beatles, which just happens to be one of the best albums of all time. And Monty, if you're watching, it's not soft Pish. It's brilliant. So
it's a real deal. It certainly is. I love all that nostalgia. I really do. What a thing to have in your possession as well, JP. Tremendous. Now, again, we do digress from time to time on a Thursday, Declan. I know you're here. You've got a wee emergency loan deal to the Thursday today. You're going back to a Tuesday next week. But we do talk about football, music, a wee bit of telly. But when I see this from John Duncan, obviously that big chant, Celtic, right? It takes me back to that episode of Cracker. Can you remember this? Now, you threw in the Fawlty Towers reference, so I'm going to throw in a Cracker reference, and it's Robert Carlyle who's playing the Liverpool. Yeah? To be a someone. Brilliant.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Oh, what a clip. It must be on YouTube, and Coltrane walks into the interview room and he's singing a Liverpool song. He gets in his face and starts giving him the big Celtic chant. I loved it. Superb. I'm not sure if Coltrane is a Celtic fan. What do you reckon? Is he a Rangers fan?
Never found out.
Oh, just as long as I never did a Sean Connery, because I watched that video you put up the other week there, and he's, old Sean, Mr. Cassidy, and then a couple of years later there he is beside Murray. So yeah, hopefully never did that.
I know. The thing with that, again, and it might be my mind playing tricks on me because it does happen, Dick, did Sean Connery, when he was a guest of David Murray, did he wear a Rangers tie?
I don't know.
In my mind, he did.
Most likely. I think it was standard issue, wasn't it? Brown brogues, tie.
Aye,
Don't
and
say
that's
that.
the
The
only way you
bond
get in.
collection is going to end up in the bin. Don't say that.
No, but you're right. He was waxing lyrical about the 40s and the 50s and Willie Fernie being his favourite player and Charlie Tully. And then Kenny Dalglish, yeah. And next thing you know, he's in the boardroom at Rangers. Unbelievable. When we're looking at the arrival, Matt O'Riley, and I don't know when he'll be unveiled, but it's looking likely. Anthony Joseph said it's happening as well. Stephen McGowan said yesterday it's on its way. It's in the post. And we're looking at some of the players you already mentioned, guys that are on their way out. I've got a list of 4, right? And the 4 are pretty obvious. It's Barkas, Hatate, Bolingoli, and I would also move on Sorrell for a lot of the reasons we've already explained. I don't think he fits that same kind of makeup, the same style of player that Ange is looking for in terms of being comfortable with so much possession, moving the ball quickly, winning the ball back quickly if we do lose it to prevent that attack to defence transition. But then McCarthy, is he creeping into that list? And we tend to write that idea off by saying, but he's got a 4-year deal. Does he really fit that mould? I'll come to you first, Dick.
I think for Ismaila Soro, I think his career needs to move on, and it's not going to happen at Celtic. He's still fairly young in terms of football terms. We've obviously got Scott Robertson to come back too in the summer, which is going to be interesting what happens to him. I see that's just popped up in a comment there from Brown Warrior. So again, he's going to come back into contention. But on McCarthy, I thought in his last game for Celtic up at St Johnstone, he played really well. Is he an Ange player? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if Ange was completely behind that signing. We were linked with McCarthy for it seemed to be every single transfer window in the summer. So I don't really know about James McCarthy. I don't think you would get another club that would be willing to take him on at this point in time either. He's not did anything at Celtic to suggest he would get a move, and had Celtic not came in for him in the summer, the possibility he'd still be a free agent just now. So I think that the other guys that you mentioned, Paul, Bolingoli, Barkas, Hatate and Sorrell are the ones we'd all expect. But, as JP touched on earlier, it's whether there's suitors out there that want these players. We certainly won't recoup anything near £5 million for Barkas and Hatate, and Bolingoli was $3.5 million. I think we'll forget that it was a fair whack coming in as KT's replacement. And all these guys, you don't sign for those kind of fees and not be on probably upwards of £15,000 a week. Don't have a clue what any of them are on, but probably combining those 3 together, you're talking the best end of 40 grand a week, which could be spent in better positions, or trying to offer guys like Vickers or Jota permanent deals.
Must be frustrating, JP, for somebody like Ange to be sitting there and we're bleeding 50 grand a week on a few players, and there's other guys lined up, guys he knows can come into the team and fit his system.
Aye, legacy signings. Is that what they're called? I mean, yeah, the McCarthy one still kind of baffles a bit, because it was his fitness more than anything that everybody was worried about. I don't think anybody had any qualms about what he could do with a football or without a football. But just as fitness levels, I mean, that we spoke about it when he signed. I said, at the time, I said, well, if at the end of the season he's sitting there with 30, 40 appearances this season, he'll have contributed. But I mean, what is he sitting at right now? Nowhere near that, and we're over halfway through the league season, and for a variety of reasons, I guess probably fitness and injury, that's meant that he's not contributed. So that doesn't really equate to value for money at this moment in time. If you're being cold about it, it's not quite. And I know players take time to settle in, but I mean, he's not exactly from the other side of the world. He's we've seen Japanese players come in and absolutely immediately make an impact. So it's not about settling in really for him. It's more about getting his fitness in order and avoiding injury. And that midfield's going to be a really tough place to get into, isn't it? With O'Riley coming in, Hatate coming in, and I thought Hatate was very, very good. I don't know if I'd go as far as to say he was outstanding. The next day it was like he was the second coming of Christ. And
he is. You talking about JP?
Nah, having that. I'll reserve judgment. I think he was very, very good. I thought he did excellent. I thought his range of passing was brilliant. But it wasn't. It was like people were saying he was a 10 out of 10. I think he was an 8 out of 10. I don't think he was a 10 out of 10. that's just me. I'm being controversial. Sure, people will be like, "Shut up! What are you talking about?" But I can only say what I see.
The thing with that though, JP, another nice 80s reference saying what you see there, that might go over your head, Dick, is...
If you see it, say it. No, it didn't go over my head.
That's it. I don't think we expected it. Well, I certainly didn't expect it from Hatate. I mean, like everybody else, when we're bringing in these players from a league I don't have a great knowledge of, and I'm going to put that out there because, I'm so concentrated on Celtic and where we are, I didn't have a great knowledge of the J League, right? So when you hear these three names, like everybody else, you do as much research as you possibly can. The vast majority of that's online. Sometimes you bring in experts like we have done before and speak about the players on the podcast. So I think what I had in my own mind was that Hatate was the least likely to make an instant impact. So when he comes on and has a very good game, like you say, it almost heightens that a wee bit. And I think that maybe I have reacted in the same way because I thought he had a great game. If I was to maybe go back and watch it, it may well be that he kind of took me by surprise. I thought, yeah. I did think he was excellent, but he was the one I had kind of graded myself as the least likely to make an impact of the three players.
I understand that because obviously Ange had Maeda at Yokohama, and Ideguchi had made that move over to Leeds and had kind of, taken that step forward in his career to come over to the UK and have a go. But, I thought Hatate, I'm going to disagree with JP in that one. I'm giving him 9.5. I thought it was sensational. I nudged my cousin in 5 minutes and I says to Gary, I says, he's a player, by the way. I says, watch this. And she just, I get what JP's saying because at times some of his passes weren't coming off and whatever, but it was just his intelligence to try and play these balls was really impressing me. I think he will only get good. He's 24. I find it really interesting that he's come through the university system as well in Japan. He's not been capped for Japan as of yet. We pray he's not capped for Japan when the 2nd of February comes round and he's playing in that game. But I thought he was sensational, and I really think we've got a player in our hands here. And, if I was David Turnbull or Tom Rodgick, I'd be quite worried if I was both of them, because if he keeps those kind of performances up week in, week out, that might not happen. Of course, it's just one game. I might be getting ahead of myself here, but I thought it was sensational. I think he's a proper Ange baller.
An Ange baller, there we go. Copyright Dick McConville. I thought when you nudged the person you were sitting next to, you were going to say, what's his middle name? Because this is a baller. The one thing I also noticed was very much like Stan Petrov. Remembers Petrov played and it looked as though it was raining. He was always dripping in sweat. No matter what game, he must have gone over so much distance every game. I was really impressed with Hatate's work rate. He was all over the park. And his movement, I think that took me by surprise as well. And I hope that every player we bring in just contributes. That's the big thing. JP made a point there about McCarthy. And I've been standing up for McCarthy, I think. I mean, he's made 14 appearances, JP, but he's only played 3 90 minutes in a Celtic jersey 3 times, 90 minutes 3 times. And the conversation we had is, I think we were also talking about players in the past, like maybe Nir Beaton, who has gone through several seasons where he's been what you would maybe describe as a fringe player in the squad, a very successful squad, part of successful teams. But sometimes you probably could go through a whole season and say, well, where was he pivotal? What did he contribute that was memorable? And there's been seasons where you couldn't really pinpoint a memorable beat-on performance. And I think what we had said, JP, was at the end of the season, if he's got 30 or 40 games under his belt, then McCarthy's been a decent acquisition. But I can't actually see it as I'm sitting here. And of course, we've got another midfield player coming in who I think would be ahead of him in the queue. Do you expect more moves, or do you think that all depends on getting rid of these guys that are fringe players? JP?
Yeah, I think so. I think our squad is pretty heavy at the moment. Like, is it not something like 30? At last count, 35, say, first team players. It's a lot of players and a lot of money going out the door. So there has to be some sort of redress. And I think we were all kind of fooled into thinking that we had no players because they were all out either injured or had COVID or whatever, just before Christmas, when we were, as Ange Postecoglou said, we were on fumes, as we have got towards. Of course, that's the reason why we asked for the winter break to be pulled forward. I mean, there's nothing to do with
Sporting integrity, JP. Sporting integrity.
That game on Monday could have been played Wednesday, the 29th of December, with 500 fans in it, and I mean, I didn't forget that as I was walking into the ground. And by the way, I would have missed that game as well, so it would have been annoying too for that fact. But I know it was just I've lost my train of thought now, going on about pulling the winter break forward. The players that we've got coming back, it now suddenly makes us realise that we have got a decent squad. It's just that we haven't been able to call upon a lot of them. And as a team found out the other night, when you start losing players from your team, key players from your team, it affects your performance. And that's been commented on by a lot of the pundits on things that I've been listening to recently, pointing out the fact that, Aribo was missing, Arfield was missing, Davis was missing. It's like, well, it's kind of hard to perform at your optimum level when you're missing players. And it was laughed at in December, all hamstrings popping and all of that and everything else. And it's just like, well, we got through that period, and we only dropped 2 points at St Mirren. Now we're getting players back. We've got to be looking to go absolutely full pelt at everybody that comes into our path, starting on Saturday, and then obviously more importantly on Wednesday against Hearts.
Yeah, absolutely, JP. Now, there's a point coming in here. Strangelove the Doctor, who comments a fair bit on the Bulletin. So welcome back to the show. You're watching on YouTube. Is Matt O'Riley even a target as ever? I will believe it when he's in a Celtic shirt and holding the scarf above his head at Celtic Park. Even then, we've been duped in the past. Strangelove the Doctor.
Don't say his name.
I'm not going to.
Don't say his name.
He who shall not be named. Imagine we had a broadcast back then. Imagine the fallout from that. But I was looking... Going back to what JP was saying, Tony was in the building. Yeah, he was, and we did a broadcast around about that time. I was looking back, and we asked the question: who should we sign out of Tony, Hatate, or Stephen Fletcher? That was the discussion point that day. It just shows you, when we're checking out every single story involving Celtic, how some badly age and some age pretty well. But again, looking at these transfers and how suitable they are to the Ange system. I was just looking back, and since Ange took over, we have brought in 17 players. Now, I'm including Joey Dawson in that list simply because he's played for the first team. Ordinarily, I would have just put him in with the B team because he was bought as a B team player. 17 players in, that's an incredible turnaround. And I think that the strategy is definitely different, although there's a few of those players that I agree with JP must have been legacy signings. I mean, Liam Shaw, Urhoghide, perhaps McCarthy would have fallen into that bracket as well. And I think that a lot of this comes down to Ange's dealings with those in charge, Declan. So let's have a wee chat about that. We talk about Ange in terms of his dealings with the media. His dealings or his relationship with the fans. I mean, you know him better than most, Deck, about his relationship with the fans. Gone out with, for lunch with him, Gio, and all that kind of stuff. But what about his relationship with the board? How important is it that he seems to have crafted out a relationship with the people that he needs to craft it out with, in terms of Michael Nicholson, for example?
Yeah, you just hope it's not just a flash in the pan season, because if you go back to season 16-17, it looked like the manager at that point in time had a good relationship with Peter Lowell and everything was rosy in the garden. And yet we go into Champions League qualifiers the season after that. We've got Ned Beaton putting it centre back again. So this January window is a lot more positive than I think really any that Brendan probably had at Celtic, even though he probably didn't need to add a lot. 16-17, I think that was a window we added Ebu Kouassi into our side, if I'm correct. I don't know if anybody else came in. Again, a man that was a fair whack of money.
Yeah.
To come into the side, but you just hope it's not, a one-season wonder from Celtic. January should be a window that's key for us in terms of looking towards those European games, whether it's in the Champions League or in the Europa League or Champions League qualifiers, whatever it is. It should be a key window, and I think it's a really important point to touch on that we're buying guys that are coming towards the end of their season, not halfway through when it's more difficult to get them in. We'd heard the rhetoric from Peter Lowell coming out, it was difficult to get players in January. But, the guys that we've brought in, all three have fitted in perfectly. O'Reilly's halfway through a season at MK Dons. It looks as if we're going to get that over the line. So it's very important that there's a relationship there between the chief executive and Ange Postecoglou, and it's good that he's got a relationship. There's obviously a relationship as well from the other board members, that they're giving Michael the backing in terms of finances to go and give Ange the money he wants to spend. So as long as it continues, fantastic. But we'll be the judge of that come the summer window and after that, and whether they're still giving Ange the support he needs.
It's interesting now. Just through discussion, JP, these blasts from the past, these names are dropped, and Declan's just dropped Kouassi into the mix. Interesting enough, he's still only 24. He just turned 24, Kouassi. And I always, when you look at the transfer history of these players, the Celtic move always stands out as an anomaly. You look at a lot of these guys that we brought in for around about that time for the same kind of money. So we buy Kouassi for over £3 million. His previous transfer fees had been 45k and 23k. When we sell him, we lose a couple of £1 million on him. But it's almost as if these transfers are almost, to Celtic, are almost anomalies. So I'm glad we've got away from that method of identifying players and bringing them in on a wing and a prayer, and every so often one of them working out, but more often than not you lose a couple of £1 million and you've got to move them on. When you're looking at Ange and his relationship with Nicholson, some of the comments that we've had on this podcast in the past, JP, not you and I specifically, have been that we've always had that kind of like focal point. So we had Peter Lowell, a very strong, presence within Scottish football, who is working at boardroom level. You had Fergus McCann a few years before Lowell comes in. And Kevin Graham is always of the view that he would rather not really have that. He would rather that these people just got about their business and it wasn't all about them, and they didn't have to really engage, and they just did their job properly. You're much happier, even though Michael Nicholson seems to be keeping a low profile, that things are working a lot better than they were before.
Yeah, absolutely. As Declan said, that season, you did think everything was harmonious. Everybody was sort of very, singing from the same hymn sheet and all that, and then, lo and behold, you find yourself a year or two down the line, and he's talking about Terminado, and as soon as you hear that one word, it was. And also the way that the signings changed. It went from being guys like Scott Sinclair, Cole Toure, guys that were clearly Brendan Rodgers' guys, and then all these signings just start coming out of like thin air. Shred. You're just like, I've got about 1 million wingers, and you're just like, how does that change? And that can't be allowed to change again in the way that it did.
Yeah.
Because the way things seem right now is that everything is being led by the manager, because things seem different to how they've been because of him. And I don't know if he's just gone round and given everybody a shake and going, what the hell have you been doing? This is how a football team operates, and this is how transfers operate. And don't give me this list, and just ripping up a list in front of them, throwing it away and going, here's a list that me and so-and-so have drawn up. These are the guys we want. Forget about your list. Forget about relationships with agents. Forget about, robbing Peter to pay Paul. None of that. We want the best players that can come in for Celtic, and they can come in ASAP. I'll speak to them. I'll get a view of how they feel with regards to this football club, whether they see it as a money maker, whether they see it as a spiritual awakening or a spiritual walk, as Tommy would have liked to have thought of players coming here, understanding what it means to play for the club. I mean, I saw Daisen Maeda's Instagram story when he just had filmed somebody had obviously filmed it for him, maybe a relative or friend or something like that, and he'd put it up on his Instagram story, which was just filming Celtic Park with the lights, the much maligned disco lights at the start, and he just had like loads of emojis with the kind of eyes out emojis. And to think about what that must feel like to a guy like that. I don't know what Yokohama Marinos stadium is like, or the atmosphere, having never been to Japan, obviously. But I'm going to hazard a guess that it's nothing like what he saw on Monday night. And he said, I thought I was going to score. I had a vision that I was going to score or something like that. I decided I was going to score a goal, and somebody tweeted and went, "Can you decide to score a goal in the morning on the 2nd of February?" That's incredible. But I just, I've got a moment. I just wanted to hark back. I like doing an on this day. So on this day 1 year ago at Celtic, right? We were after the Dubai debacle. We were players obviously had to self-isolate, so they didn't get to train properly. And the first game back was a year ago tonight at the Tony Macaroni Stadium. And the team was Barkas, Taylor, centre half pairing of Duffy and Beaton, Griffiths, Sorrow, Turnbull, Christie, El Yunusi, Ayer. Oh no, actually Ayer must have been centre half, so Beaton maybe would have been midfield.
Ayer must have played right back. That was when we were experimenting, remember?
Aye, just shoehorning players in where they can go. And obviously you could see that night that there were, any benefits of the 6 days in Dubai were long gone because they'd have to self-isolate. Most of that team had to self-isolate, and mirror that with where we're at just now, where we've got this absolute enthusiasm for the team. The players are all hopefully fit, and we're not carrying the level of injury and I guess just disarray that we were in at that point, because it was that month last year having also been one of the worst months for me personally, just in the whole pandemic. The January 2021 was horrendous, just because it felt like nothing had changed. We turned into the new year, nothing had changed. We were still in lockdown, and Celtic, to add insult to injury, were just in a complete mess, and we were just watching everything unravel in front of us, and it was just horrible.
You felt helpless as well, JP. Yeah. We're talking about the beauty of being at Celtic Park and the experience of that, but there is an importance there of the fan base and the energy levels and the positivity that can create. And Celtic missed it. There's no doubt about it. You brought it up. You were probably mocked at the time. You brought that up as being one of the elements, a big element for Celtic at the time. But when you look at even just the other night's team, correct me if I'm wrong, the only players that Ange hasn't brought in from the starting lineup were Taylor, Rogic, Callum McGregor and James Forrest. Yeah. Four players from the starting 11. So then you start to see the transformation from that team that JP's just read out there to the team that we've got here. And by the way, some tremendous individuals that are rated very, very highly. But, the way that we've been able to transform this team, I hope and I think that that return to form, with regards to the transfers, where Compere's popping up and Sved's popping up, and it's quite clear the manager didn't want them in the club. I mean, Sved because he said so in that interview, and Compere because he played them for 60 minutes against Morton. I mean, what other indication could there be that was not a Brendan Rodgers signing? And as long as we don't get back to that kind of process, and I don't think we will, whilst the biggest decision maker is no longer making that type of decisions, then we can look ahead rather than worry that this will come to an end, and I hope it doesn't come to a Terminado style end. Keepers, let's talk a wee bit about the keepers end, because obviously Bain's been given a contract. Joe Hart is undoubtedly number one by some distance. Barkas, we might be struggling to move him on, but I'm sure there's efforts to move him on. And Hazard, of course, we've found a loan deal for a year. He is now the second goalkeeper that we've got loaned out, along with Ross Doohan. And we've got the two young players who have been playing for the B team, Declan. Are you quite happy that Toby and Mullen are going to be our backup behind Hart and Bain? Quite happy with that?
I certainly think that the decision to give Scott Bain a new contract in 2024, I think it is, as part of what's kind of been dubbed as Project Toby Oluwayemi. But, there is still a concern there for me, Paul, that if touchwood Joe Hart picked up any injury, I don't know how confident I would be of Scott Bain stepping into the team. And that, probably goes back a good few years ago now, when we were probably really happy with the backup goalkeeper. You maybe seen Doris de Vries, and him and Gordon were kind of switching about a wee bit. So I'm talking rubbish. When Foster came in, you obviously had Gordon still there, so we're probably quite happy with that at the time. But I certainly think giving Bain the extension is due to the fact that we're going to probably look at bringing Oluwayemi into the side at one point due to his, he's been in the Europa League squads, etc. Hazard, I think, got his contract in the back of that cup final. And yeah, if Joe Hart get injured, would I be confident that Scott Bain come in at the team? I don't know. I think we would just need to see how that played out. But certainly, I don't think it helped Scott Bain last season that the 4 or the 3 or whatever 5 that we were playing in front of him changed every week. The centre half pair changed every week. So there could be a bit more confidence instilled in him, but he's certainly nowhere near the level of Joe Hart. So we'll see how this goes. As long as Joe Hart keeps fit, I'll be quite happy with it,
Yeah, I mean, pound for pound, so far for me, JP, the best signing we've made this season. And I know how great Jota's been, and I know how great Kyogo and everybody else that's made an impact has been. But Joe Hart, for me, has just been a revelation. I mean, the way he was chasing that ball down the other night, just so confident. And this is a player who they reckoned, there was a whole host of goalkeepers back in the day when the back pass rule came in. It changed things for a lot of goalies, didn't it, JP? And a lot of goalkeepers suffered. Similarly, with a lot of teams starting to play out from the back, goalkeepers who previous to that didn't really have an issue, it created an issue in their game. And this is a guy who's chasing the ball down, 40 yards out of his goal, and he's looking so confident, so influential at the back. But I share the concerns and the reservations that Declan's got when it comes to the backup. Where are you with the goal? We've got 7 goalkeepers at the moment, although 2 of them are out on loan. And obviously, I'm pretty sure we'll be making efforts to get Barkas out as well. Are you quite happy with the goalie situation as it stands?
Yeah, obviously, because the likelihood of a goalkeeper, touch a lot of wood here, the likelihood of a goalkeeper getting injured is minimal. It's usually only anything to do with their, a collision or something like that, or a hand injury. It's very rare that a goalkeeper is going to do his hamstring, is it? I mean, who knows? In our training, maybe that's likely, but no, I think you're comfortable with Joe Hart. Scott Bain getting a new deal. I don't really know why there was such negativity online about that. It was again, somebody will probably say, you get a small violin out, but I mean, I just don't. I didn't see that and go, oh, I'm going to write a negative tweet about Scott Bain getting a new contract. I just kind of went, well, if he's prepared to be a backup goalkeeper, if he's willing to sort of be that guy that is just there, a la, I think it was mentioned yesterday, Lucas Zaluska or Logan Bailly or, De Vries or whoever, if he's happy with his lifestyle at Celtic, which is obviously going to be a good lifestyle, you're not going to slate a guy for, being the backup keeper at Celtic or a backup keeper at Celtic on reasonably good money. You look at his past career where he was before. This is the biggest it's ever going to get, probably now for Scott Bain. No disrespect to him, but I'm not overly concerned about that. It is a bit of a concern if Hart was to get some sort of long-term injury. But I think the defence is in a stable enough place now, you think, to cope with maybe a couple of games here and there if Bain was to have to come in. And then if Barkas goes either this window or the next, we'll definitely look to probably strengthen in the goalkeeper area and provide competition. But on Hazard's move to Helsinki, that's a hell of a move for him. Just not sure about in football in terms, but lifestyle. I mean, I've been lucky enough to go to Helsinki once. I had a day off there before a gig, and it's just an amazing place. It's a really nice city and full of beautiful people, male and female. So he'll certainly enjoy himself there, I'm sure.
I love hearing about your tour memories, JP, and I'm going to bring this up because there was a wee bit of controversy recently when Ian Bankier, club chairman, said that we might need him back when referring to Scott Brown. I think Brownie's doing a good enough job where he is, Declan. I'm going to come to you first because Urban Kulshe reckons he was the man of the match the other night. I mean, what did you make of a couple of things about that? Let's tie it into Celtic. We're not talking about anybody else. This is Celtic. But Aberdeen did us a wee favour. They got a drop at Pittodrie and we have cut the gap to 4 points. And there was a bit of controversy around the fact that Rangers somehow got a player sent off by Kevin Clancy. And the last one, I believe, was sent off by Kevin Clancy as well, December 2019. Yeah. So what's your thoughts, Bruni? That's just gamesmanship, isn't it? I mean, We need more of that in the game.
Yeah, I mean, like many players at Celtic last year, I know he was the captain, but he had a very poor season. It wasn't nice the way he departed the club. I think we'd have all liked him to go out on a high, like his predecessor many a year did, and Billy McNeil, who I think only won 2 more major trophies than Scott Brown. So, Bruni is, to me, the second greatest Celtic captain that's ever been. I like the one where he was counting up the trophies in the hand. I don't know if you've seen that photograph of him. He's got the 10 fingers out. Must have done it twice because he needs that. He was doing it with his toes. But yeah, it's just complete gamesmanship. You could see that he's not, the Scott Brown of 2017 or 18. By no means he's at that level anymore. He's certainly slowing down. I think the game when we were up there, the one that Jota scored in the 84th minute, I think he came off about 60 minutes, obviously feeling something a bit tight. I don't think, Bankier, it was one of those ones in the room, I think, when he says that, let's bring him back. I think Scott Brown's time is well and truly up at Celtic. It would be nice if he goes and crafts a career in coaching and he's good enough to come back to Celtic as a coach, don't be just giving him the job for the old Pals Act if he goes out. And, I think he's probably into the coaching a bit under Stephen Glass up there at Aberdeen, but it's also very good that we've got a side like Aberdeen in the league that's given ourselves a game and Rangers a game again. There's been many a year under Derek McInnes that Aberdeen were just a kind of rollover side, whereas it makes the league far more competitive when you've got players like Scott Brown and opposition teams that are, giving you a game. Tony Watts went to Dundee United. It makes them stronger. You've got a character in there, and Charlie Mulgrew. And others, Hearts are in a good run of form just now. Got a bit of goalkeeper there at Scotland's number 1 and Gordon. So it improves the league. But on Bruni, yeah, good laugh the other night. And always worth a chuckle when you see him doing stuff like that. I think Aberdeen fans are getting why we love them so much, because when he's in your team and he's doing that, it's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, JP, it puts a wee bit of pressure on the league leaders, and that's something that didn't happen last season.
No, not at all. And Willie Miller actually on the radio the other day kind of alluded to the fact that the game the other night was a different game if it had been played when it was originally supposed to have been played with 500 fans. He just said it's a completely different game. How do we know how it would have gone in the other way? So there's been a few comments like that about the set of fixtures this week had they been played without the intervention of the 10 SPFL clubs to bring the winter break forward, which has been proven right. And there was so much wailing and gnashing of teeth from quarters.
That's reminding me of the Not the View, mate, coming away with that. That's brilliant. That's a 1987 reference.
Well, yeah, actually, I can probably remember that. I probably just looked at the pictures and Not the View at that time and didn't read it. But no, it was enjoyable to see that, and all this. The super scoreboard the other night was comedy gold. I knew within about 30 seconds of the first call that it was going to be on Tam Selleck's son on Twitter. It was an absolute gimme for the guy, He must, in fact, I think he did actually tweet at the time, just going, "This is amazing," and I was like, "Okay, well, give it an hour or something, and he'll have something up." But just this full outrage at Scott Brown refereeing games and all this sort of stuff. I mean, he bought the foul from Ryan Kent. He absolutely bought it. But, there's a clip down the rounds that hasn't been talked about by anybody of Alfredo Morelos rolling about 5 times. He completes a circle rolling about in the middle of the park after a tackle where he's not been touched. And they're all moaning about Scott Brown and everything else and unsporting, bringing the game into disrepute and all that. You're like, have you seen what the Ryan Kent celebration at Celtic Park with the gun to the head and what's that if it's not unsporting or bringing the game into disrepute or Ryan Kent punching or attempting to punch Scott Brown? It's like, it's bewildering, amusing, and it's one game. It's a couple of points dropped. It just shows that there's a chink in the armour there of this supposed great side that we're up against. You lose a few players, it makes a hell of a difference. We lost a lot of players in the month of December, and we got through it. as I said last week, I still thought it was amazing we actually got the points that we did in December. And, everybody was really downbeat, and there was lots of crazy tweets after the St Mirren game. People like willing to chuck the towel in and all that. And you're like, wait a minute, this is not by any means done. I think there's a lot more fight in the manager and this team. And there's a lot more hunger as well, because we've shipped out the people that didn't want to be there, that wanted to bright lights, big city elsewhere, money, all that. Fine, go and do it. We want guys here, as Postecoglou said, we want guys here that want to be here and that want to contribute. And we've got them, and we're getting more of them.
We are, and we're also getting a lot of the injuries back as well. Julien, Forrest, Jota all coming back into the squads, which is tremendous. Just to finish off then, Declan, one big question about Alloa at the weekend is how do we play that in terms of resting players, playing the full-strength squad? Do you give some of the fringe guys game time? Is it too much of a risk to do that?
I think, the kind of hybrid balance probably of a team at Alloa, bringing a guy like Ralston back in's a no-brainer for me. Possibly Stephen Welsh coming in there too to give him some game time. Adeguchi maybe getting a start, and again, it's the surface is a bit of concern. It's a plastic pitch, isn't it, Alloa on Saturday? Mm-hmm. So a guy like Julian who wasn't on the bench on Monday evening, if he was ready, I don't know if it's the kind of game that you'd like to take a risk with. So I think a kind of hybrid type Celtic team, keeping Callum McGregor in there, but maybe putting him a wee bit further forward for Adeguchi to come in, maybe Hatate in there. If you want to give Jota a run out, I'm sure he'd be okay, and probably Giacomakis as well. But we don't want to burn out, Maeda too quickly. And just, a right balance, I think, is correct. Don't by any means make 10 changes to the team. 5 or 6, absolutely fine.
Yeah, I'm always concerned with big changes when we go into a game, JP, against lower league opposition. We would never disrespect them, but we've seen it. Remember, Morton beat us at Celtic Park, and we'd made
I'm not allowed to forget that, because Dave McGeechan at DF, where I work, is a huge Green at Morton fan, and every 23rd of September or whatever it is, I get a text. Never forget. So yeah, I'm always reminded of that, and obviously, remember the Inverness Cali game, being there in the car park ready for the game, and then being told that it wasn't happening. Mm-hmm. Only for a week later, I'd moved to France, and I phoned my dad from a phone box on Jean Medsan in Nice, and I just said, "Dad, what was the score?" And he went, "Hold on, I'm just bringing up the teletext." And he's like, I'm sitting there, I'm in a phone box in Nice waiting, and then he's like, Inverness Caledonian Thistle produce biggest Scottish crop stock, and I'm like, no way. And I went, please tell me not. I'm just going to the page, and then it was obviously going to 302 or whatever, and then I'm standing there waiting, going, this can't be. Maybe it's just for extra time or something like that. And then he goes, Inverness Celtic 1, Inverness Caledonian Thistle 3, and I just dropped the phone and I went, no, this can't be.
JP, can I tell you something, right? You might not be able to remember it, the date. Declan, what was the date of that game?
My birthday, the 8th of February 2000.
That was the day young Declan was born.
Disaster.
That was the day Dec was born. Honestly, can you imagine the post-match reaction bulletin that night if a Celtic State of Mind was up and running? Incredible.
He did my old man on for the Queen Mother going absolutely ballistic, because I think he was more annoyed that he was missing the game, but it was all right after it, because after the score. But hey ho.
There we go. It just shows you how old we are, JP. Listen, it's been a tremendous show once again. Thanks for getting involved there, Declan, joining JP and I on a Thursday for chat about Fawlty Towers and Cracker and various other things, as well as Celtic. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. We're 1,100 strong in a live show there. It's always appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, get yourself onto the YouTube and subscribe for daily content from Acsom and other content like the Unplugged sessions we were talking about earlier on, and a Scottish football show every night, The State of Scottish Football, where we have a panel who support teams from all over the land talking about all things Scottish football. So thank you all for getting involved, and thank you, Declan and JP Mason, for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.